What's up, everybody? We're going to be going on in about a minute. Hold your horses. And this is a beat made by Jimmy P. Come on in, come on in. What's up, everybody? It's your girl, Khadijah Toto, and you are listening to In Trance You, the podcast where we are deliberate creators of our own realities, serving united in light during the darkest hour. We foster spaces of love and acceptance. We are one people living through different simulations. We define and choose to be our own truths while living in a co-created environment within multidimensional realities. Now, with that being said, we are just curious to know how others create their worlds as inspiration to create a better world of knowledge and understanding for ourselves. Everything we're going to say, you already know, and you don't have to agree with us. We simply want to share with you what is works for us along our journeys. So if you're ready, without further ado, I would like to introduce my beloved, beautiful guest, Miss Kia. But before I go ahead and bring her on stage, I want to tell you a little bit about her. She is a wife and a mother who is devoted to her husband and has beautiful children. They're so beautiful with amazing personalities. And they have one beautiful child who we'll be talking about throughout the podcast today. And all of her children have blessed her in many ways. And they've been in trials and tribulations and, you know, in the relationships and in life in general. And we're going to talk about how the overcoming of that, and do we run towards faith or do we run away from the faith? What do we do when trouble comes? So we're going to go ahead, and I just want to introduce Miss Kia.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, girl. Hey, girl. How are you?
Girl. I'm good. How are you?
I'm so good. I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you for coming on our show.
Yes. Thanks for having me.
I love it. So I just want to get straight into it. You know, I remember when we were talking, you know, we were originally supposed to be talking about not being the girl on social media.
Right.
And then something actually happened where we ended up talking about your husband, your children, and it just went, the conversation did. So I want to talk about, I know you said you have a very special child, so I want to talk about when you said that in your blog, what did you mean you have a very special child?
Okay, so I have my son is born with Down syndrome, and with that he has a lot of cognitive um, developmental delays. Um, with that, he also was born with three holes in his heart, which because of those holes kind of made him very sick as a baby. So at about 6 months of age, he got really sick, and the doctor and his cardiologist didn't really know what to do um, as far as what direction they wanted to go as far as medication or just kind of um, figuring out what this virus was that he had. It was just a common cold, but because he had three holes in his heart, he just wasn't able to withstand it. So he ended up being admitted to the hospital one morning. He had a fever of like 105, over 105 degrees. And there it just went from that moment to a 7 month hospital stay where he went through cardiac arrest. He was intubated. He was in a medically induced coma. He was hooked up to so many different machines, and it was just about 7 months of a hospital stay. And eventually, he ended up being able to get heart surgery once he was healthy enough to have it. So, at about, I think it was my birthday actually, he was 1 years old. He went and got open heart surgery, and we brought him home about a month later. And we still have to deal with some of the challenges from that 7 months he endured at the hospital.
Wow. And when you were going through that, just as your family, when you were going through that as you're being a wife, you're being a mother, but at the same time, the family is going through these challenges at the same time. So how did you guys keep stability, if at all, during that time?
Well, during the time he was in the hospital, we had a lot of people kind of coming together. Me and my husband, I mean, we just literally had to be there for each other. But, we had our mothers and, our siblings and stuff. They were emotionally supportive. And we were just trying to stay positive, trying to stay prayed up. We were praying for a miracle at this point because the doctors were saying he wasn't going to make it. So we were just praying for the best. It wasn't easy because at the time my husband was working, and I was off for family medical leave, but I ended up just having to stay completely out to care for him.
Mhm.
So there were some nights I would spend the night at the hospital and he would be at the house. And sometimes he would spend the night. So it was a long 7 month period. But we just kind of came together and supported each other in that 7 months of him being in the hospital.
And then, so can you take me through like when you're in the hospital, and you just go in because it's basically a fever, right? And so like what happens in the in between time? Like what were the doctors saying? Was there any type of like doubts or times when you felt like where your faith was challenged?
It was definitely challenged, but he went in. He had a high fever plus a um, a cold. It was cold symptoms and a high fever. He also had three holes in his heart, so he the way he should. So once they admitted him that particular day, um, they ended up taking him and rushed him to another hospital. We were still in our pajamas because, like, literally, it was so cold when I took his temperature and it was that high. So they rushed him to the hospital. We went to the house, we grabbed clothes, and we followed them to the hospital. And when we got there, there was just a team. There's a team of doctors in the room with him, and he ended up they ended up putting this big rubber thing on him to kind of I don't know what it's called, but it's supposed to regulate his body temperature because they weren't able to get his temperature down. So it was like this big yellow rubber like bodysuit they had him on, and by the time I saw him, he was already asleep, and that was when we got there. was the last time I actually saw him.
Hey, hey, hey. Welcome back. Welcome back. It's
Yes.
okay. So you said by the time that the doctors had saw him, like what were some of the even the comments that the doctors did they have the faith that, he would make it?
No, some of them did, but during that 7 month stay, you're gonna run into many different doctors, many different nurses, and some nurses were helpful, some doctors were helpful, some doctors were just like, oh, he's not gonna make it. He needs a heart and a lung transplant, and as sick as he is, he's not gonna get it. And they would, kind of chuckle with it as if it was funny, but like that was their humor to, I don't know, maybe lighten the load. Um I don't really know. It just wasn't really great bedside manner. So a lot of times we felt like, well, dang, like this is our child laying here. Like, you think this is funny? Like, this is not a game. Like you don't have a child laying here fighting for his life with all these tubes coming out of his neck and arms and chest and stuff like that. So a lot of times it was frustrating. Like, you know,
Yeah, it's almost like an insensitivity to, just because that's something that they see every day.
right.
They expect, you to kind of have the same reaction as them. And it is, I was going to say it seems insensitive, but it is insensitive. And it's one of those things where it's kind of like, when we used to, so I met Kia when she was my first teacher trainer ever, when I was 16 years old. And one of the things was like, as a teacher, you watch children get hurt all the time. Oh, he just fell off the slide. He'll be fine. But then when you tell the parents, they're like, but it's like having that sensitivity. And it seems that you didn't get that in the
No.
doctor's office. And it- so how did you keep the faith? How did you keep the faith alive? How did you go? Were you crying? Like what was happening in your mind?
It was definitely an emotional roller coaster, but I just knew that he was going to come through it. I felt that God told me that he was going to bring him through this. And as ugly as it looked, and it was like every time he reassured me everything was going to be fine, something would happen. I would get a call at 2 o'clock in the morning. And every time my phone rang at 2 o'clock in the morning, I was on edge because he was always the hospital giving an update. And they would call and it would say, hey, things took a turn for the worse. And I'm like, what the heck does that mean? So every time I felt that he reassured me that things would be okay, something would happen that I feel in hindsight was testing, my faith on what he told me that he was going to bring him through this. So, we would have to, go to the hospital and see what was going on, continue to pray over him, continue to be positive. And, he came out of it, eventually.
And what was your relationship? I know you said that you did a lot of prayer and you prayed it through. So what was your relationship with God before, this happened? Was it always like this or how was it prior?
No. So I grew up, my mom went to church. Well, she took us to church. She actually was, she was a Muslim, then she was Jehovah's Witness, then she was Baptist. So I grew up Baptist, and she, I knew what I was supposed to do. Like, she gave me you read your Bible, you pray. So naturally, when something happened like that, that's what I went to. Can I say I had a relationship? Like, me and God was like tight. We was buddies. No. I said my prayers over my food and I said my prayers when I went to bed. But as far as like being in a relationship with him and being connected and close to him and reading his word, no, I was not like that. I just knew I needed help, and I knew that God was the only person, the only thing that can give me that at that moment. Nobody else can do what he could do based off of what my mother taught me growing up.
Right, right. You know, it, it's so interesting that like it seems like you constantly have to like unlearn and relearn and unlearn and relearn and unlearn and relearn. And it's like this constant cyclical thing that happens throughout life. So when you're learning or even going through these life processes, especially this one in particular, what was it like before all of this happened? Did you know that your child was going, because they have a lot of tests and stuff these days, so did you know that your child was going to have Down syndrome, or is that something that came about later?
So there are tests, and I did take a test while I was pregnant. I think you take it at like 12 weeks or 9 weeks, some weeks early on, and
Mhm.
it came out positive. The doctor called me and she said, "Hey, your results came back positive." And I'm like, "What does that mean?" And she said, "Your child may have a abnormality." And she was like, "But you're young." I was like 26 maybe when I had him, and she said the chances of that happening at your age is very slim to none, and there's a lot of false positives with this test. So she sent me to a specialist that I had to continue to follow during my pregnancy. And they had to rule out a couple of things. I think it was like 3 to 5 things, and everything was ruled out in those tests. So, we actually went to dinner and celebrated. And I was like, "You okay? Everything's fine. Everything's going to be good." And then the day he was born, we found out he actually did have Down syndrome. So, but that day was the day that like he couldn't breathe, so they rushed him to the NICU. He turned blue, and he actually stayed there for a month. So it was like as soon as he was born, he had complications.
And how long was it between the open heart surgery and him being born? What was that time span between? Is this something that was constantly happening during this time?
No, so he was born. He spent a month at the hospital, transferred to another hospital. So about a week, I think he was there for about maybe a week and a half. He came home. So at about before he was 2 months, he came home with like a whole bunch of medicine, round the clocks medicines for his heart and his lungs to make sure that he can, breathe. Well, for his heart at the time, he didn't have lung issues yet. Um, so from 2 months to about 6 months, we were fine. We were able to feed him. Um, like he was going to feeding therapy because he had an NG tube in his nose because of his heart was because of the holes in his heart. Babies who just drink out of a bottle do it with no problem, but when you have holes in your heart, it's difficult for you to like do anything. Walking, drinking a bottle, it takes energy. So he had a feeding tube, so he was going through feeding therapy and everything prior to him getting sick. So he got sick at about 6 months of age. um, he went to the hospital, went through a series of cardiac arrests and all these other issues. He ended up needing a tracheostomy while he was there. So once they released him, they didn't release him until he got heart surgery. So they released him to a rehab center, and then from the rehab center, they released him to another hospital so that he can get his cardiac repair, his heart open heart surgery. And then he stayed there for about a month
Mhm,
healing, and
mhm.
then we were able to bring him home. But we brought him home with round the clock. If we thought the medicines before was round the clock, this was like round the clock. And then we had like this big huge oxygen tank because his lungs were so beat up from him being on ventilators and stuff. So he came home with a whole, pretty much half the hospital that we had to kind of deal with once he got home.
That whew, g that takes a strong family to be able to go through that and to stay together. You know what I mean? Like, one thing that, like, as you're telling the story and I'm empathizing with you, is I'm thinking of myself in your shoes.
Mhm.
And, you know, how did you how did you vent? How did did you break down? How did you what was on your mind that kept your faith alive? Like, I know you can say, I have faith in God, but what does that faith look like? You know what I mean? Like, when you are looking at your child in the hospital bed, and doctors are saying, haha, we might as well pull it, like, and they're being insensitive. You're looking at your child and it's like, what was the reaction of your husband? What were your children thinking? And most of all, like, who was the strong one?
So I will say, while he was in the hospital, my faith was like on lock, because I knew we was bringing him home. Nobody was going to tell me you need to make plans. Like, he's not going to make it. I knew we were bringing him home, so I was like on lock with it. When he got home, it was very challenging. There was no, it was just us. We had nurses eventually, but it was very challenging. So my faith wasn't as, it fell off, because now I got to deal with some new stuff,
Mhm.
and I felt like, okay, God, this was your plan. Your plan to me is stupid. Like, I don't, I mean, to be honest, I was like, God, you're the one who's supposed to make plans for our lives.
Right.
This plan, I feel like it's flawed. I feel like I could have came up with some better stuff than what you just came up with. You got me dealing with this. My husband's dealing with his sister, and he's sitting here dealing with this. And like, this was your plan. Like, did you mess up? And I had, I questioned it for a while, and I don't want to say I lost faith in him, but I questioned why he allowed things to happen.
Mhm.
Like, why do we have to go through the things? Why do we have to go through difficult times? Why do we have to deal with this? Why does he have to deal with it? And he's not even, he's just a baby. Like, why does he have to deal with that? So a lot of the times it was a why for me. I just
Mhm.
don't get it. And who
Mhm.
had to be the strong one? We both did, at different times, because
Mhm.
there were times my husband was strong and I was weak, and he was there for me, and I would be there for him. There was times we was both weak and nobody was strong. Um, so that's just how it is. It's not perfect. Nothing's perfect. I can't say, oh, when I was down, he was up. There were sometimes
Mhm.
we were both down and we had to both bring each other up, separately. Or sometimes I would stay down and he'd be up, and it was just, we just had to deal with it. We got to figure it out.
And in that you said earlier, I don't know why difficult things have to happen. Now that you are where you are, have you been able to kind of connect the dots back to learn, like, what was your, so to say, process of lesson, or like, what did you learn or still learning from that experience?
So it took me a couple years. I wasn't searching for the answer. I just felt, for a couple years, God's plan is stupid. um, what took me out of it was someone telling me, not even knowing my situation really, that, and I will say, for the longest time, I would feel sorry for myself. I felt sorry for my life. I felt like everybody should roll out the red carpet for me and my family, because we had a special needs child and nobody had to go through what we went through. And one day this lady said, everybody goes through something. And she was very like, everybody go through something, like, get over it type of situation. And in
Mm.
that moment, I was like, wow, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna lick my wounds for the rest of my life,
Mhm.
because this is our normal. We have to embrace our normal. Um, and I had to realize, like, he has an older sister. She's watching how I handle this challenge. So if I am complaining and I'm kicking my feet and I'm licking my wounds, what am I teaching my children, my other children that are watching me? I had to be strong for my children. I had to be strong for my husband when he is feeling, weak. This is what we have to deal with. So, you know, this is just what it is. I'm not going to make no excuses. We're no different from anybody else, and that's just how I had to carry it.
Whew. You said that someone told you that, you know, basically they're not gonna feel bad for you.
Yeah, and in the moment, I wanted to punch her in her face when she said it, but I was irritated at the time when I was talking, but when she said it, I got quiet, and I was like, dang, she's absolutely right. Because I don't know what she's going through. I don't know
Mhm.
who she's taking care of at her house. Like, who am I to put myself on this pedestal and make it seem like I'm going through the worst thing in the whole wide world? Like, I don't know. She could be battling cancer right now, and I'm sitting over here trying to make her feel bad for me. And I don't even know her situation. So I had to
Mm.
stop using my story as a way out. I had to stop using my story as an excuse on why I chose to do or not do, what I was supposed to do or not do.
You know what? You really touched something in me just now when you said I had to when you said I had to basically change the story. Like I had to stop like leaning on my story. And how did you change that? Like I know you said this moment is kind of what made you kind of choose a different narrative. So then what did the new story sound like?
So the new story, I had a new baby and I had nothing but time on my hands because while she was at school, I would be sitting at home pumping milk. And
Mhm.
I was bored out of my mind. And my son, he had nursing at the time. So he was at school. My daughter was at school. Husband's at work. I'm the only one in the house. And I'm bored out of my mind. I want to go back to the gym, but I
Mhm.
can't because I'm hooked to this daggone breast pump. And I'm bored. And I'm not even watching TV. Like, I won't even turn the TV on. I literally just sat there and I would, just try to figure out, like, is this life? Like, I
Mm.
accepted my son. I get it. One lady told me one time I need to thank God for him.
Mm.
And she said that. I was like, what? You want me to thank him for the A through the Z that he you want me to
Right.
and I had to really sit on that. And I was like, and she said, you need to thank him because he chose you to be that boy's parents. And
Mm.
not everybody can handle that. There are some people who kill their kids. There's some people that abuse their kid. They don't feed their kids. I will tell you right now, my son is not supposed to be here today. He's about to be 11 next month. And they ruled him out. Um, so yeah, there's some families that wouldn't even accept him. There's some parents that would be like, oh wait, he has Down syndrome, adoption. Like I ain't no,
Right.
no, thank you, I'm good. So um, it just took me a lot of sitting, a lot of reading my Bible, a lot of praying. I would just kind of sit with a notepad and a pen and just, I wanted to hear God's voice. I need you to give me some directions on what I'm supposed to do with this life because I don't know. I'm confused, I'm bored, and I know this is not I know this is not the life you want me to have. So I need you to tell me what I'm supposed to do. And I would sit there. And sometimes I would just sit there with the pen, there'd be nothing on my pad. And I just kept sitting and sitting until there was some writing on that book because I was determined to hear what he had to say. I just wasn't about to give up.
Mhm. Mhm. And actually put your blog underneath because as you were writing, is this the part where it did inspire your blog, or is this like when did you said you would sit there until you could write. When is the point where you actually decided to write, and when did you decide to put the writing out there for
Okay.
everyone else to share it with everyone else?
So once I sat and I had my, Jesus moments, I change my mindset. And that's what I got out of sitting there. I had to change my mindset. I had to unlearn my old ways of thinking and doing so that I can adopt the new ways of thinking and doing that he needed me to do. Once that was adopted and once I walked in that, I realized, you know, I have a whole new perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I did right in there was blog. He wanted me to blog. So I said, okay, I'm an artist. I know how to draw, but okay, I can write a little bit. So I just, it took me a while. I didn't do it immediately. It took me about 3 years to finally do the blog, come up with the blog. And I just, I try to get something out there every month or whatever he, leads me to write. It could
Mm-hmm.
be twice a month, but I try to get it as active and I try to address topics, that I feel like people need to, or I feel that God is put on my heart. There's sometimes
Mm-hmm.
I'll just write on a paper an idea because it popped in my head. I'm like, okay, that's the next block, and I'll write it down and ask him to lead my finger so I can get it out there.
I love that. I love that you, it seems like you surrender yourself to the power and the strength, and it's like just giving yourself over and doing that through writing. And I think it's amazing just even to see how different people do that. Some people it's through writing, some people it's through music, some people it's, through painting. But what does, I know earlier you said that you would just sit and wait or and search for God's voice. So my question to you is, what does God's voice sound like to you?
So his voice to me, when people ask me this question, it's not like I can't be like, oh, he sound like Samuel L. Jackson. Like I can't. It's not like this crazy, like for me at least. It's not like
Oh,
this deep, thunder. It's
right.
literally my voice in the form of a thought that is
Mm,
in my heart or in my brain, and it always leads back to the Bible. So I know the Bible is a book that is alive. So when I
mhm,
read it, I want the chapters, I want the verses to, you can read the Bible front and back, I don't care, 500 times a day. If it's not in your heart, it's never going to be remembered. So if
right.
something comes in my thought process or my if I'm driving and it's like, oh, don't forget to pick up such and such, it's not me. I can't take the credit for God's work.
Right.
I feel like he sets me up for success. And if without him, I wouldn't be able to remember nothing. I wouldn't be able to remember how to cook. He's the one behind everything that I do. So I am always going to give him credit for every thought and the blog is all him. So when I blog, I literally pray, okay, God, lead my fingers because I want this to be my typing, but your words.
Amen. 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 And it's song we say, Alhamdulillah, all praise due to Allah, or all praise due to God. I think that that's beautiful, and it's beautiful how faith, no matter what, I don't even think it's you know religious at times. It's the relationshiping with God, like it's like the vehicle you take to get to that destination.
Right.
And I mean, like we're encouraged to study all things. So for me, I love opening the Bible. I know more of the Bible than I do the Quran, because I'm newer to it. But like, what in it? What were your go-to verses, or what was your go-to verse that you kind of made a mantra when you were feeling some type of way, or you needed that source of inspiration? Where did you find yourself often flipping your Bible to?
I usually would go to Galatians or Ephesians. Um, or Proverbs. Proverbs was another one. But what I used to do was I used to get post-its and I used to write down when I would be studying. I would write down verses and I would just stick it on the wall. Um, that resonated with me. So anytime I walked by it, I would read it and be like, "Oh yeah, that's right." Because you can forget, you can forget
Mhm.
what you read. I know I got 3 kids, so I'm forgetting a lot of stuff. And I was just like writing on a post-it and stick it to the wall, or sometimes I'll stick a post-it on the bathroom mirror, or I'll stick a post-it on the wall, um, going out the door, so everybody who leaves the house and comes in the house can look at that particular verse.
I like, and do you think that that you actually doing that and kind of like seeing that, do you think that that helped you in your faith of the like the repetition or like subliminal messages or anything?
I mean, I definitely feel like it. If it didn't help me, it helped the other people in this house who've seen it.
Mhm.
I posted it there because I loved it. I loved it, and I wanted to be reminded of it. So sometimes I would just go and stare at the wall and just be like, "That's my verse," and I
That's
would
my
leave.
verse.
So, and then I would leave. But um, I just did it because I just wanted it to just be stuck in my heart forever. So I would write it down so that it could find its place back in my heart if it had left.
Mhm, mhm. And did you find it, how often did you find it leaving, and how often did you have to look at it again or go to
Hmm.
the wall and just stare at it and reread it?
So the best way I can explain this, when it leaves your heart, it's because you are no longer connected. Uh,
Mm,
your phone needs to charge. When you
mhm,
get connected, the battery gets low and it could die, eventually if it doesn't have that juice. I feel like that's the same thing with spending time with God, opening your Bible. The less time you do that, your battery just continues to go down and go down and go down until your scriptures are just staying there no more. You forgot what was in your heart. It's To me, it's a daily thing, and it's like, it's like you can't cheat eating healthy.
mhm.
You can't outrun your fork. You know, um, your food is gonna tell on you. It's gonna tell on you. She done ate all the biscuits. She had all the ham. She ate everything. Okay, we can tell because of what she's looking like. Someone,
Right.
but you can tell when people are in their word and they're praying. They have a walk. They have a talk. They can empathize. They can
Mhm.
forgive. They can not judge others. There's just a walk that goes with that. You cannot fake that funk.
Right, right. You know, it reminds me as you were saying that of, you can't outrun the fork and stuff. It reminds me of when I was younger. I was like maybe 5 years old, and we were on our way actually from Kentucky and we were moving to Virginia. And there was some, sodas and juices in the back of the car. And I guess my young self, I drank all of it. Like there was nothing left, And my mom was like, who drank all of this? Did you drink all of this? And I was like, no, I didn't do it. But as we were kept driving on the highway, I had to pee.
Hmm.
And so it was like that was the evidence that showed up of, like it is one of those things where, like what you said is like we can tell. It's like, you're a personal trainer, right? And so for you, even if you have a client saying, yeah, I'm eating right, and you like, somebody lying. How you post the brownie and ice cream on Instagram, but you eat it, right?
Right. You just can't outrun it. I think that people feel like with the Bible, it's there. I read it. I already read it. Um,
Mhm.
it's not a book. Even with a book, I read a lot of inspirational books. Sometimes I have to go back and reread them because there's always going to be something that you read previously that when you read it again, it may resonate differently. It
Mhm.
may hit you in a different place that it didn't hit you before because you didn't go through what you had just recently went through, so it hits you
Mhm.
differently. So that's how the Bible is. It's like you got to go back and reread. Go back and read Proverbs. Go back and read, Revelation. Like it did, the words didn't change, but your perspective and how open your heart is at the moment
Come
made
on.
that change.
Come on. That's it right there. My mentor, he always says, he's like, you need to reread the information that I give you because every time you read it, I guarantee you it's going to be different. Now, the first 2 or 3 days, I was like, all right, I'm not rereading it. I don't care what you say, Mr. Mentor. Mr. Brown, I ain't rereading this. And then as I kept reading it, like someday, of course, I'm skipping a few days because I don't believe what he's talking about. So, but when I went back to it, like maybe 7 days, 8 days later, when I decided to be compliant, um, I read it and I was like, oh my gosh, like it's like this increased awareness that
Hmm.
I didn't have before. So now I'm reading it. Like that was one of the things of like when I had switched from Christianity into being Muslim, when the scripture in Islam made so much, like the Quran made so much sense to me. And it was just like I had increased my knowledge, increased. And then when I went back to the Bible, I was like, oh, this book is so beautiful. Oh my goodness. And then I kid you not, it was so weird because I had a moment where I was like, maybe I'm supposed to be a Christian. Like, let me go, but it just made everything that much richer of like as you increase knowledge and then you go back to the old knowledge of what you thought you knew. Well, what you knew, which you did know, but you actually end up knowing even more
Right.
from the same thing. Um, so what if anything, we have about 3 minutes left, and I want to ask you a few questions just before we wrap things up. For a parent who either A, let's go with let's make this a two-part question. What would you tell a parent who is found out that she did the test, she's pregnant, she did the test, and the test came back positive that she has a child who has let's say Down syndrome. What advice would you give her if she's debating on whether or not to keep the baby? If her and her family are debating on whether or not to keep the baby.
I mean, I would definitely encourage her to keep the baby. The thing with Down syndrome or any other abnormality, whether it be like a big old mole on your nose or, a knot you were born with on your head, um, perfection only exists in our head. And God doesn't see Down syndrome. He doesn't see, oh, she has a big, huge wart on her back. Or she has one arm and he's missing half of his lip. He doesn't see us as flawed. He made us the way he is supposed to make us. So I would encourage that family, keep your child because perfection only exists in your head. You're looking for something that you don't understand, that you God is blessing you with something that you actually need. You don't understand it right now, but you will understand it one day. If you
Mhm.
are willing to be patient, it will change your life.
That's deep. That's deep. And even listening to, your story, like, what are those times that, make it worth it? Because I know we talked a lot about, him in the hospital and things, but what would be the thing that makes it worth it of being that parent?
Well, my son teaches me. Um, so just a kind of aftermath of his hospitalizations and everything like that. My son is now he's disabled. He's legally blind. He's in a wheelchair. He's unable to eat, so he's tube fed. He doesn't have oxygen or anything like that, but he does have breathing treatments daily because of his lung issues. But the one thing that makes it worth it is when I hear him laugh, because he's the happiest child, the happiest person. And I feel like from what he's gone through, he has every right to feel like, you know what, forget you and you and you and the rest of y'all, but he's so happy, he's very content, and he teaches me to show up every day
Mhm.
because he fought his way through life with God, and everything that he's been through, him not even being able to you know, wipe his own butt at 10 years old, and
Mhm.
we have to feed him with the tube. He's happy, he's content, and it teaches me that I need to be content with what God has given me. I don't need to complain because he never complains. He's always happy and always smiling and very adaptable.
I love that. I love that even in what he goes through, on a day-to-day basis, right? Because and like you highlighted, he's going through that. Yet he's the one that's still happy, and he's the one that was, on that hospital bed, and doctors saying X, Y, and Z. And I think one of the most interesting parts is that he's not even the one to be able to tell his own story.
Nope.
It's like it's you telling his story. It's his sisters telling his story. It's your husband telling his story. And it's such a beautiful thing as I'm sitting here really thinking about it, because you're you're being a voice to someone who is voiceless, like voiceless in terms of like the physical voice.
Right.
But I'm
He's not
sure the
voice.
actions are loud, and
Right.
my other question was, what advice would you give to a new parent who, you know, just found out that they would have a child that has Down syndrome?
What
Like
advice
how would they prepare for, that kind of, is it all the same, or does it come in different degrees? How does that work?
I would say? You can't. With any child that you have, you can't prepare. There's not a book. Hey, you're about to get a child with Down syndrome or autism, or you about to get just a child. You
Mhm.
can't prepare for that. That's just something that you have to figure out. You have to figure out your baby, and once your baby becomes a toddler, then you got to figure out a toddler. It's almost like they go through different phases, but specifically for Down syndrome, you can't prepare. I would say connect it to the source
Mhm.
and just try to be as positive and change your outlook as much as you can, because this child is going to need he or she is going to need your guidance, your love. Just because they have Down syndrome doesn't mean that they are unlovable. They need love too. um,
Mm.
and you shouldn't withhold love from a child just because in your mind you have an idea of perfection that only exists in your own head.
Mm. I love what you just said. Like, I think that's so beautiful, is to basically show that it's not perfect, and you're never gonna receive that. And also, like, because when people think of this, whatever they think in their head of what their family is gonna be, I'm quite sure, having a child challenged with those kind of cognitive things, that might not be the first thing you think of, right?
Right.
But I like the fact that that's why I wanted you here today, even, is to have that awareness, because I don't hear, you don't hear or see them. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, not to be funny, but it's kind of like, Dick Gregory and his theory of, like, where did all the albinos go
Right.
after elementary school or high school? Like, where did they go? They just disappeared. Like, where did they go? You know?
Right.
And I just say that to compare and say, I feel the same way about, like, with cognitively challenged children, is that, you know, I've seen it as well. Like being in high school, I used to volunteer with some of the children, and I would go to their classrooms every day. And I was just amazed at how, like, even though, like, sure, maybe slobber was going down their, face, or snot was going down their nose, and there would be, like, the physical responses that they would have to themselves to get that feeling. Even though that was that, I was just amazed at how happy these children were. Like, I
Hmm.
was like, do they know? It makes me wonder more about consciousness and God. Like, do they know what they're going through? And like, do they have or are they just going through it? But one of the last questions that I have is, what does you being the creator of your own reality mean to you?
Being the creator of my own reality, I can't do anything without God. So the creator of my reality to me means doing what I'm called to do in whatever form or fashion God has called me to do it. If that's blogging, if that's painting on trees, whatever it is He has led me to do, I'm going to do. I feel like I know that I'm supposed to touch the hearts of women. I feel like women, we have this, we're perfect mentality, and we're not. I think we, always are pointing the finger at the male, the men, he did that, he did that. And I want to encourage women to put your finger down and look at yourself. Okay. Look at yourself, because if you're spending more time pointing fingers at that man, you are doing no work on yourself. Even though that man might be wrong, you need to work on yourself and stop pointing fingers. I get tired of the whole men are this, men are that. Women are also this and that, but we got to do the work.
I love that. Like, he said, I would encourage women to put down their finger and look at themselves. Like
Hmm.
that, as I'm typing it. Um, I just think that that in itself is, you do hear a lot of uh, male bashing, and some of them well deserved.
Right.
But I don't think, a- any, as far as like bashing goes, like anyone necessarily deserves to be bashed, just because that's kind of like, I use that lightly. You know what I mean? Not when it comes to politics, but when it comes to life, and people going through their process, I think the journey looks different for everyone.
Right.
And I just love that you said that, of pointing the finger down and actually looking in the mirror and looking at ourselves and what we want and what we have to offer. That's beautiful. My final last question. No, this is the real last question. My
Okay.
last question is, where can people find you? What is your, I know we have the ticker down below of your blog running across the screen, but where can people find you, being on IG, Facebook, or whatever?
So on IG, I'm Kiki Fit Love. So it's just KIKIFITLUV.
Wait, hold on. Let's spell that for people, because you got people like me that are like, huh?
So it's Kiki, KIKIFIT
KIKIFIT
LUV.
LUV. And this is on IG, right?
Instagram, yeah. And then what am I on Facebook? Hold on. Oh,
Kiki Fit Love.
yes. And on Facebook, I'm Zakia Pugh. ZAKIA Pugh.
EAKIA and PUGH, right?
PUGH, yes.
And boom, there we have it. So, Facebook and Instagram, y'all follow her, get some of her trainings. We were supposed to talk about fitness and not being a girl on social media, but that'll have to be for another show. But I just want to say thank you for joining us today, and thank you for showing up and being the creator of your own reality, and just because I think being and knowing that you are the creator, it first takes a certain level of consciousness to realize that, and a certain level of awareness to realize that. And that's why I said in the beginning that we are the creators of our own reality. We're deliberate, and we are one people, uh, living our own truths within multidimensional realities, because what may be right for you is maybe not right for me. And it's not about us arguing about what's right or who's right, but it's about being able to still love and accept each other where we are, where we both are,
Right.
instead of having a constant debate about you know, why it works for you, but it doesn't work for me. Like our experiences are different. And I think if we can come together and be united in the darkness of there's unity in that. And in that we can create our own light. So
Absolutely.
I just want to say thank you so much for coming, and I appreciate you. And we are out.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you so much to Ms. Zakia. We had such an amazing time. You guys go ahead and follow her on both her IG and her Facebook, as well as going to purposefullyunique.com. I tell you, the blogs are absolutely amazing and phenomenal. And I also want to thank you guys for coming ahead and coming to entrance you, and just listening to Kia's story and listening to our dialoguing, because having faith is important, and us being able to come together as people, as humans, in dealing with issues. Cognitive challenges aren't easy for any parent to go through, from what I understand. I'm not a parent, and I don't have a child who has any challenges, but I do know from watching and speaking and talking to them, that these kinds of things are something of a sensitive. Some are sensitive subjects, while others, like here, are willing to open up and to tell you their experiences, to encourage you to be strong. So you guys keep being strong, keep being creators of your own reality, and Trance You, and we are out. Y'all have a good day. Create a phenomenal day.